Hello and welcome. My name is David Villar. I'm a professor of pharmacology and toxicology at the University of Antioquia, which is in central Colombia. And for me, it's a pleasure to share this presentation that will try to say a few things on the environmental and community impacts of gold mining in Colombia. There are two different types of gold exploration. There is what's called industrial and artisanal gold mining. Industrial, as you can imagine, is done by very large multinational wealthy companies. It tends to benefit just kind of a few people that are at the top of our food chain, so to speak, whereas artisanal gold miners are usually poor people, and they rely on that activity for a living. They're not really in the business of getting wealthy by any means, and as you can see, it's related to mercury pollution, and we'll try to say a few things about that. Now first, let's say a little bit about the history of industrial mining in Colombia, and this picture shows kind of the revenue from industrial mining that has taken place in the last decade. On the left side, we have a picture of former President Álvaro Uribe's inauguration. At that point, he stated that Colombia was ready to be a major mining country. That was 2002, and here we have a chart, and if we were to put it on the year he took office, 2002, we will see that all the revenues from industrial mining has definitely increased almost fourfold since he took office in just a matter of 5 years. So his policies have definitely benefited large mining. And here is a more recent picture or figures from the revenues. If we were to scroll down from the top, we come down to the production of gold down here, and as you can see, there are three circles. The last one kind of represents the expectations of as far as revenue that will be coming to the country from gold exploration for the year 2002, and as you can see, they're definitely expanding compared with previous years. Now, ever since he took office, a lot of companies came to Colombia and settled down, and this is just a list of a few of them, and I'm gonna illustrate a couple of examples of two of them, how they operate here in Colombia. First one is called Anglo Gold. As Hanti, it's a South African company, and the second one underlined here with yellow line, it's a Canadian company. It's called Colombia Goldfields. If we were to ask how much is local people reaping benefits from the exploitation of their land, there is a very interesting term in Wikipedia. It's called the so-called resource curse, also known as the paradox of the plenty, and it refers to the paradox that countries with an abundance of natural but non-renewable sources, minerals and fuel, are the poorest in the world. So you might all wonder, how could this be possible? Well, I'm going to give you my personal opinion, which might not be true for all companies and scenarios, but nonetheless, this is kind of a personal collection of thoughts I've put together from seeing how many of these companies operate, and we could say that the way they operate are kind of summarized in 5 points. The first one, the lawyers of these mining corporations may write the mining codes for the governments. That's many times true, particularly if there are no mining activity before they came into the country. So if we were to say this in plain language, there is going to be a distinction between what's going to be called legal and illegal mining from now on. And second, the governments will tend to favor foreign investment. Concession rights are not linked to the community. Third, they get all the working licenses from the governments that take sides with the company, expropriating land, deeming the national interest, and artisanal miners either have to sell or they lose their rights to the big company. Now this particular point is truly heartbreaking situations for many native people, because they're kind of forced out of their land. They don't really have a choice, and many times it's a matter of life or death that they're taking. They don't really have any options, as I'll show later in a couple of examples. Now, number 4, many companies, they tend to launch false campaigns through the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. In other words, they get a lot of support from the World Bank with the false pretense that they're going to bring prosperity to these countries and improve the well-being and the sanitations and many other things about the infrastructure of the country. And we'll see that there is nothing really further from the truth. And finally, they operate in a very permissive regulatory environment. The laws and the regulations are not very strict and are not enforced to protect the environment from pollution problems. And this is another circumstance that kind of repeats time after time. A lot of the officials are not very qualified, and even if they are, they get paid a very miserable salary, so many times they're very easy to bribe. Now this let's just to illustrate a couple of examples that are taking place here in Colombia, and the first one is taking place in Cajamarca, and it's a natural forest reserve. It's the name of the company is Anglo Gold, as Hanty, and the second one is the oldest mining mountain in Colombia. It's called Marmato, and this time it's gonna be a Canadian company. It's called Canadian Goldfields, and now it's called Medoro Resources. Now the first one receives the name of Project La Colosa. So as you can imagine, it's going to be a monumental mine, and here is the name of the company. They kind of launch a campaign, which I'll say a couple of things here in a minute. The exploration permits were granted in 2009, and at that time the Minister of the Environment, Carlos Costa, stated that, and I kind of quote in English as I go reading in Spanish here: the challenge is to make sure that the country can exploit its natural resources in a sustainable and responsible way. Now it'd be nice to ask him what he understands for sustainable, because I don't think mining is sustainable by any means. And as I'll show in a minute, these companies kind of destroy everything on their path. So how could they call that sustainable system? I mean, it's just it's exactly the opposite word of what sustainable means. But anyway, they put up this poster. It might not be easy to see on this slide, but here we have the name of the company on the upper right, with kind of a huge waterfall, kind of surrounded by a pristine looking environment. And down here there is a statement that reads, water is the foundation of life, preserve and protect your resources. Now as you can see, they put up this poster in one of the locations of where the mine is supposed to be taking place. And the other thing interesting is that they the environmental, one of the environmental magazines of Colombia is called 14, and guess what? This magazine is entirely financed by Anglo Gold, as Hanty. And here we have kind of on the front page of this particular issue, we have a picture of the of the former candidates for the last general election, and as you probably know, out of that election, President Santos came elected. Now another inspiring sentence from the Minister of the Environment at that point was that if the results of the exploration determine that it's viable to move into the exploitation phase, we should initiate the final transaction to exploit the reserved and grant environmental permission. Here we have a couple of pictures of the exploration sites, and as you can interpret from this message, it's very implicit that the decision to go ahead and grant permission is not going to be determined by anybody else except for the government and some bureaucrats who probably doesn't know what type of impact that activity is going to have in the whole ecosystem of the area. If you're not familiar, okay, that was a few years back, and at this point the exploration phase is now completed, and they determined that gold is superficial in an area of 1,250 acres, which is mostly forest land, and it needs to be an open pit mine. And if you're not familiar with the steps of an open pit mine, I'm just going to walk you through those quickly. The first one is to clear all the forest, and we have kind of a picture of that here with they bring in heavy machinery and they cut down all the trees. Second, they'll have to dynamite those mountains. They'll have to load all that ore onto these huge trucks, and those will be taken to mills for grinding into as fine powder as they can, and then they'll have to build these plastic ponds for leaching the gold out of the slurry using cyanide and tons of water. And this is kind of a picture of I'm not sure exactly whether this is the exact location where the mine is going to be, but they told me, several people told me that this is pretty much the area that is going to be intervened. So it's kind of a very it's kind of hard to imagine that they're gonna destroy all that mountain and take out all those trees and wildlife associated with it. Anyway, what are gonna be the leftovers once the company gets done? And I brought up this example. This is the world's biggest open pit gold mine of Yacacoche, which is in Peru, and the one in Cajamarca, our government in Colombia is proudly announcing that it's going to be the third largest in the world. So you can imagine if this is the first one, what the third one is going to look like. Nothing really but a total desert. Here kind of the pictures speak for themselves. What are some of the reports on this company, Anglo Gold? I came across this in Wikipedia. Human Rights Watch has kind of accused them of financing local warlords and paramilitary groups causing human atrocities in the Republic of Congo. British charity War on One has blamed them for profiting from the abuse of people in developing countries, and Forbes magazine, which is a financial magazine. So it's kind of puzzling that they are also they put up this kind of accusation that the company is paying people to murder trade union and community leaders opposing the company's activities in various regions of Colombia. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this event. It's called the World Economic Forum, but basically it's an event that takes place year after year in Davos in Switzerland, and it tends to gather the most powerful people in the world, the most, as you can imagine, wealthy. and they have an official slogan called "Committed to Improving the State of the World." And there is a parallel event which is organized by non-profitable groups, associations of small miners that are afflicted by the big companies. Greenpeace is one of the also the groups which hosts this other activity, and basically what they do is they run a parallel event to the World Economic Forum, and they nominate the worst company of the year. And this is what this slide is showing. They vote for the worst company of the year, and they call that the Public Eye Award, which is a critical counterpoint to the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. Well, the award for last year, 2011, was given to Anglo Gold as Hanty. This company scooped the unwanted Public Eye Award for the environmental and social irresponsibility on the sidelines of the Economic Forum. One thing I like about globalization is that news travel fast, and even in undeveloped countries, people are better informed these days of what's taking place throughout the world. And this particular project made a lot of noise within Colombia, and it kind of here we have a public protest of what against exploiting the natural reserve of Cajamarca. So here we have kind of a parade of the people with banners. Here we have one telling the minister not to pollute the water that we're drinking. And the other thing is that obviously that took place in Tolima, not far from that area, in 2011 of last year. And somebody decided to kind of draw a picture of what the mountain is going to look like, and next to it what it looks like right now. And as you can see, there is no comparison. This is just a moon-like landscape, which is basically just gonna be a desert. Nothing grows in there. So basically the company has a lot of opposition. So in order for them to gain some kind of support, what they did is to hire the University of Caldas, which is one of the public universities in Colombia, for 1,200 $1,200,000, as you can see here, in 2002. And here is the contract between those two parties, the company and the university. And as you can imagine, that's I'm not sure what the company will tell the university to put on that report on the impact that the company is going to have on the area. It'll probably have an inventory of trees, wildlife creatures living on that mountain, which in the end is going to be pointless, because that report is going to end up on somebody's desk in Bogota who doesn't really who probably doesn't know much about the I guess the importance that preserving those mountains is, and he probably has some stakes on the operation, and he's gonna get some kind of a benefit from granting permission to go ahead and exploit the mountain. Now the other thing is, how about the water? Those companies, they use a lot of water to extract that gold and separate it from the rest of the minerals, and they create what's called these tailing ponds. And on this particular case is we have an example from a tailing pond in Bonanza in Nicaragua, and as you can see, basically this is just a lifeless water body of acid water, heavy metals, cyanide. In this case, they left these cyanide barrels floating here on this murky water. And as you can imagine, any living creature that were to approach that pond and try to drink water from it would be endangering its life, no doubt. Now that report, if you want to read more about this particular case in Nicaragua, there is a very nice report. It's called The Legacy of Greenstone Resources in Nicaragua, and it was done by a Canadian group, obviously, that is trying to keep an eye on their companies. It's called Mining Watch Canada, and it's based on Ottawa in Ontario. And basically what they did is they went to the area once the company left, and they kind of documented what they left behind. And basically what they saw is a huge trail of misery. As you can see here, the people are using these cyanide barrels to make up their fences in the houses. They use them as public trash cans. And on a nutshell, that report is it kind of summarizes in the end, saying that we need urgent action to have the Canadian government support legislation that imposes standards for mining companies operating abroad, and they should respond to community needs, not just demands for international capital. And at the moment they rely on voluntary codes of ethic. Now let's say a couple of things about the second industrial operation, and it's taking place in Marmato. And as you can read here, it's the oldest golden mountain that has been exploited for over 500 years in Colombia, and it's basically been a poor town of 2,000 residents. They have depended on its gold for generations. They basically dig these tunnels, and they use dynamite to blast the mountain underneath, and they loaded the rocks on these wagons. And you can see there is somebody pulling this wagon here. Then they loaded the rocks on these railing systems, and they were taken to these mills for grinding. And obviously they use mercury on that process there. But and as you can imagine, we could call that a subsistence economy. They basically live on what they make on a day-to-day basis. But here comes Big Brother, and this time it's called Canadian Goldfields, and they have better plans for Marmato. They arrived in 2007. At the time, they estimated that the gold reserves in the mountain were worth $14 billion, and that could be tapped in just 20 years. And if you want to see that nice document, it was stated by Tom Law, which was the president of Canadian Goldfields, and I saw that on a CBC documentary in 2008. And the company obviously had to proceed with caution here, because they have 2,000 people living off that mountain. So what they did is started buying all the mining rights and the local mills slowly. In year, it took about 4 years from 2007 until 2010. They were probably paying those miners a better paycheck at the end of the month, and until I guess the time was just right to say that it was not profitable to keep those tunnels and mills in operation, and they had to basically close down everything and convert it into an open pit mine. So and that was in 2010. So as you can imagine, that didn't go very well with the people of the town. There is one big thing in this case kind of standing in the way of progress, as you can imagine, and that's the town of Marmato with all its inhabitants. And here we have an aerial view of that town. As you can see, there are a lot of landslides that have been happening throughout the years, probably from blowing the mountain underneath. But anyway, in 2010 they started protesting against converting all their livelihood into an open pit mine that would obviously put them out of business forever. And at that stage the government had to intervene, and they brought in their crew of experts from the Colombian Institute of Geology and Mining. So basically what they did is they went out there and they took pictures of landslides, muddy roads in the river, cracks on the walls of houses, and they made a pretty nice report. That's the title of that report. And the conclusion is that the town of Marmato is declared an ecologically unstable area for its inhabitants, and the only solution is relocation. And the relocation is taking place in the nearby town of Los Llanos. The government, together with the company, is building these modest houses to relocate those people. Now at this point, the questions that we should probably ask the government and the companies: have you planned any future for the inhabitants of Marmato apart from relocation? Because at the moment there are about 2 million Colombians that have been displaced from their native land. And the other question I would ask them is, will you respect those people unwilling to leave their homes? Because as you can imagine, by now the company owns everything except for the town of Marmato. So they can't really push those people out of their home unless they went out there and they just do it by force. And many of those people are not willing to leave. One of those was the priest of Marmato. He kind of took side with the miners, saying he's staying, he's not leaving the town, and he was murdered by gunshots on September of last year. And here is a picture of him, 36 years old priest. Now, just I thought it'd be neat to say, where is all that gold being used for? And I couldn't find a very exact figure, but a couple of sources say that about 70% of gold that is exploited this year ends up as jewelry. So I brought up a nice display of pure gold Disney character dolls showing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and that's priced at 30 million yen, which is equivalent to 300,000 US dollars, and is produced somewhere in Japan. Now the interesting question would be to ask, in order to produce those items, how much forest was destroyed, how much dynamite was used, how much water was used from the aquifers, how much mercury and or cyanide was used and released into the environment, how many wildlife creatures lost their habitat and or died, and how about the local impacts to the inhabitants, agriculture, fish, and our future as a species. And as closing words, I would like to maybe answer the question that I was posing earlier, and that's why are countries with abundant resources poor? And the other way we could probably ask that same question is, what's all that revenue that is coming from those big multinationals going? Because obviously it's not going to improve the social, economic, or environmental situation of the country. When we talk about the social, there is no investment on infrastructure, the schools, hospitals, roads, sewage plants. Colombia has no treatment sewage plants in major cities like Bogota, Medellin. The roads are miserable. I mean, they're very windy. Not a lot of them are not paved. It takes a long time to go from one place to another. Hospitals are not very well equipped, and medical care is far from far from stellar, and the schools are also very ill equipped. How about the economy? How much of that revenue is sustained in the country? How many jobs are created? Because about 90% of the most people in Colombia are pretty poor, and only 10% are considered wealthy. And how about the environment? Can we afford the destruction of the wildlife habitats and forests, particularly in light of the planet's climate change? Now I might be able to answer some of the questions with regards to the social and economic aspects, but when we come to answering what risk we're taking when we're destroying our environment the way we are, I think we're definitely taking very slippery road here. We don't know where that might take us, and in the end, I would ask ourselves, what's a real treasure? Water and a sustainable ecosystem, or gold? And having said that, I hope I have kind of share a couple of interesting ideas that maybe you didn't know about Colombia. Colombia is a wonderful country, and it needs to be protected for future generations. And at the moment, I don't think we're doing our duty very well with regards to making sure that we're gonna leave the future generations nice looking pristine, not pristine, but at least a decent environment where they can enjoy where they can enjoy going out and see a nice looking forest that everybody so much would like to have. So having said that, I'm gonna close here, and I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. Take care and be well. Bye.